إن الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسول المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله عليكم ورحمته تعالى وبركاته. Right, we're going to begin Usul al-Hadith. Take a look at in fact, before I even get into anything, let's just get a quick understanding. What I want is, I've got in mind a plan, bi'ithnillah, to do some hadith studies. So with the aim being that we're actually studying hadith, but to prepare us for that. So a text giving us the guidelines, a brief, I'm going to say test, but it's not really a test, something which will be a brief poem which you can take a look at, but at the same time just make sure we've all learnt, and then look at some actual mutun, some texts of hadith. But before we begin, Mustalah al-Hadith or Usul al-Hadith, what do we already know about this? ماذا نعرف? What do we know? Let's, I know Maz is trying to show me his folder with all his notes, but go on then. Something, what does it deal with? What does it deal with?
The sayings and actions of the Prophet.
Okay, the sayings of the
categorization.
Yeah, that's more hadith, the content of hadith. This is the categorization of hadith. This is the analyses of hadith, not in its content, in its structure. Okay, so, and it's got two names. It can be called Mustalah al-Hadith, like if you like, the terminologies of hadith, the nomenclature, as they call it, or it could be Usul al-Hadith, the foundations or the principles of hadith. Right, this is a contemporary text we're going to take a look at. The reason I like it is the way he's laid it out. It's very, very well explained, especially for those who can understand Arabic. And he has a structure. After this, he also introduces you in the second book to Takhrij al-Hadith, although we might not. We could maybe explore that as a later option, some other point. But da'na nabda, let us begin. So, right now, he begins by reminding people that why Usul al-Hadith. And he's going to first of all go into a brief historic account of why its importance. So he begins with the ayah of the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. That, oh, you who believe, if a person who is not of sound character comes to you with some news, then ascertain or verify what the person has brought. Don't just jump to conclusions and be analytic, be objective. Somebody's saying something, don't just go by what he said. First of all, see that is it authenticate it. Then he mentions the hadith, and this is a very interesting hadith, that نَضَّرَ اللَّهُ امْرَأً سَمِعَ مِنَّا شَيْئًا فَبَلَّغَهُ كَمَا سَمِعَهُ. That may Allah enlighten a person who hears, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, who hears from us a hadith, a statement, and then فَبَلَّغَهُ كَمَا سَمِعَهُ, then he conveys that to somebody else as he heard it from us. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, فَرُبَّ مُبَلَّغٍ أَوْ عَامٍ سَامِعٍ. Many a people who something has been conveyed to will end up understanding it better than the one who is actually conveying. So that is the, if you like, from the blessings or the unique blessings upon this ummah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is almost hidden in things like the science of hadith and stuff like this, that sometimes a hadith might be conveyed to a person who comes after, but he understands it maybe better than the one who's actually telling him. Now, and in another riwayah, فَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَفْقَهُ مِنْهُ, that many a person will carry fiqh to somebody who will be afqah, more knowledgeable than them. So you might end up taking knowledge to somebody, and that person ends up being of a greater level at a later stage maybe than the person himself. وَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ لَيْسَ بِفَقِيهٍ. And not everybody who carries knowledge is knowledgeable. That is A very interesting and amazing hadith from Tirmidhi. So look, keeping that in mind, this looking into asanid, what does isnad mean? What does isnad mean? A chain. So before, obviously in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and shortly after, there wasn't this chains. People weren't concerned initially about chains. Don't mean by that the chains, the chains of hadith, yeah. So Ibn Sirin says, قال لم يكونوا يسألون عن الإسناد. They never used to ask about isnad. They wouldn't care about it really. Until فلما وقعت الفتنة. Then when issues occurred, there was heresy, there was deviation, there were people had ulterior motives to transmit something. قالوا سموا لنا رجالكم. Then people began to say, tell me who your people are. Meaning, who do you get this stuff from? Before the fitna happened, people wouldn't ask. So you said something, everybody would go to. You said, قال Rasulullah, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, everybody's there, they're on it. Once the fitna occurred, it wasn't like that anymore. It was, سَمُّوا لَنَا رِجَالَكُمْ. Who do you get that from? So it became very objective and analytic. Right, now, in this science of Mustalah al-Hadith, what are some popular texts? Now, this may not be of too much use to you now, but maybe at a later stage it will be. But it's nevertheless, just to briefly go over, there's a book called Al-Muhaddith Al-Fasil Bayn Al-Rawi Wal-Wa'i, and that was written by Abu Muhammad. What's his name?
Hassan bin Abdul Rahman bin Khalad Ram Hurmuzi.
Ram Hurmuzi. I thought just in case Rama Hurmuzi, but Ram Hurmuzi. Abu Muhammad Ram Hurmuzi is this title. It's not a title, but his association is with Ram Hurmuz, which is a place. Just in case you're thinking the name Ram. It's not the name Ram, it's Ram Hurmuzi. Right, so Abu Muhammad, as his name was, he was the first person to author any text on Usul Hadith. That was an independent text concentrating on Usul Hadith. I know Tirmidhi and has some books in it, and he has, but this was a complete, as in a text focusing on the science of Usul Hadith. Before him, nobody really had done that as an isolated work. So Abu Muhammad Ram Hurmuzi was the first to do that. Now he passes away in the year 360, okay, and that's his book. There's another book, Ma'rifatu Ulum al-Hadith, which is by Abu Abdullah al-Hakim al-Nisapuri. Okay, somebody who passes away in 405 Hijri. Now al-Hakim, he also attempts to kind of bring about this individual isolated work. As you can see, only a few decades after Ram Hurmuzi, maybe about 3-4 decades after him. But the thing is that it still isn't, it's still in its early stages, this Usul Hadith. It's not, it's like prototype versions, early versions. Then you have Al-Mustakhraj ala Ma'rifati Ulum al-Hadith by Abu Nu'aym al-Asbahani, somebody who passes away in 430. He tries to add and work upon what Hakim had done. So he tries to add to his work. He takes a look at his book, Hakim's book, Ma'rifatu Ulum al-Hadith, and says, look, he missed this, he missed that. Let me try and add to it. Let me try and do this. Let me try and do that. Now, then along comes the book, Al-Kifaya fi Ilm al-Riwaya by Abu Bakr Ahmad al-Khatib al-Baghdadi. Somebody who passes away in the year 463 Hijri. Tell me something about Abu Bakr al-Khatib al-Baghdadi. Hafidh of Hadith, a don of Hadith, known as Hafidh al-Mashriq, Hafidh of the entire Eastern Muslim world. Okay. So, wait, you just grab that from there. No, just grab that. Yeah. So, right now, who at the time, he was the Hafiz of the entire Eastern Muslim world, a Don, Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, a very famous Shafi'i scholar, somebody who they say, I mean, there's some controversy surrounding him as well, especially from the Hanafiya. They say that he considered becoming a Hanafi once. This is Allahu A'lam, but this is what some of the ulama have written, that they said he considered becoming a Hanafi. And I think he was on his way to Umrah or something, but anyway, he thought that, he'd had enough of the Shafi'i madh'hab. Apparently, he had some issues and he thought about becoming Hanafi, but he had a dream in which he saw the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him that, why are you kind of abandoning my sunnah and like going to something else? And so as you can imagine, it's a very harsh type of statement. So he becomes really like he remains a Shafi'i, but becomes very hardcore, and he's known to have been somebody who refutes the Hanafiya passionately at times. And this is why they say that there's a conflict of interest and all sorts. But anyway, he was renowned in his field of hadith, untouchable. In his day and age, he was only parred by, if you like, the only parallel to him was Abu Umar Yusuf ibn Abd al-Barr, the Don, the heavyweight of the entire Western Muslim world. Right, obviously he was known as Hafiz al-Maghrib and he was Hafiz al-Mashriq. With that they had kind of just sealed it really. They were the two heavyweights, absolute heavyweights. And quite strangely, they both passed away in the same year, 463 Hijri. So in that year, the Muslim world lost two of its major huffaz of hadith. Right, but anyway, Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi writes his book called Al-Kifaya, that which suffices, fi ulum al-hadith. Now and this book, they say about it, يعتبر من أجل مصادر هذا العلم. This was the first book that had now almost evolved like dynamically. Before this, Qadi Ram Hurmuzi had written a book, followed by, you had Asbahani, you had, who was it, Nisapuri and all these books, but they were still good. They were the first attempts. The isolated works. You've got, books of just now this science of usul hadith, but it wasn't developed the way it should be. It was still in a very formative stage. Along comes Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi. His book Al-Kifaya really kind of slices through this science, gets to the kind of nucleus of it. He starts coming up with masail, he starts organizing them, sequencing them. In his book, Al-Kifaya is the first kind of defined version that you see of this usul hadith has now emerged. It's come out of that shell, it's out of its developmental stages. It will still continue to develop, but it's now taken full form. Okay, it's not, it's not a low budget movie production anymore. It's something major now. They've hit it. This is it. So, well, after that you have Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi also authors Al-Jami' li Akhlaq al-Rawi wa Adab al-Sami'. This book is more to do with ilm al-hadith, against the science of hadith, but also the adab, the etiquettes of people who carry hadith, and who are they and what are the different categories and how should they be. On that topic of the etiquettes of those who carry hadith comes the Western Don once again in hadith, Al-Qadi Iyad. He writes, who's more or less just after, and he writes the book Al-Ilma' ila ma'rifati usul al-riwaya wa taqid al-sama'. That how should hadith be kind of conveyed, and what are the different categories of giving ijazah, of writing hadith, what are the ways, the etiquettes, things like this. And then you continue to get after them. There's a book that is mentioned here, known as Ma la yasa'ul muhaddith jahlu. That's just a simple text like that which muhaddiths need. Then there's a book called that is mentioned here, Ulum al-Hadith. This Ulum al-Hadith is by Abu Amr ibn Salah. This is an interesting point. You see, Ibn Salah, he passes away in the year 643 Hijri. So there's been almost like 2 centuries almost since Usul al-Hadith had already emerged in a solid manner. Now, when it reaches Ibn Salah, he really crystallizes Usul al-Hadith. He comes out with several, he takes it to its peak. And he has his other text as well, where his Ilal al-Hadith. No, this is the Muqaddimah. The Ulum al-Hadith is the Muqaddimah, but his Taqsim Ulum al-Hadith that he has also, where he kind of breaks them down and he mentions them into, you've got like, he'll go into 67 different points, and he mentions very unique points. Not only unique points, he starts to get very ultra structured. He brings this uber structuralism to Usul al-Hadith. Before him, people weren't on, like they had it sorted. I mean, Usul al-Hadith was out, but he starts introducing things, like he has very famous statements like, can a hadith now, like a category discussing, can a hadith now be still certified as sahih if none of the earlier people had ever certified it as sahih? And then he apparently will explain how he feels that can't happen, and then many later muhaddithin will challenge him and stuff. But anyway, Ibn Salah is a very important character, a very important personality in Usul Hadith. With him, Usul Hadith becomes crystallized, to some perhaps too artificially crystallized. That is a critique or a criticism that some have raised later on. I mean, whether it's, that's a matter of discussion whether you value that criticism or not. Some people feel maybe he even he kind of almost artificialized the whole thing by, manufacturing it to that extent. But anyway, you've got the famous Taqrib by Nawawi, which is really, the Taqrib by Nawawi is a summary of Ibn Salah's book, okay, Ulum al-Hadith. Then you've got Tadrib al-Rawi, okay, which is Suyuti's book, and that is really a commentary for Nawawi's Taqrib. And then other books as well. I mean, you've got things like Nazm al-Durar fi Ilm al-Athar, which has been done by Zainuddin al-Iraqi, a very famous text which is known as the 1,000 Poems of Al-Iraqi, Alfiyat al-Iraqi. I'll just mention very quickly some other names like Fath al-Maghith by Sakhawi, Nukhbat al-Fikr. This is a very interesting book. I think you guys should remember this name, Nukhbat al-Fikr. This is by Ibn Hajj al-Asqalani. And then much after, you get small texts like Al-Bayquniyya, which is very popular, small poem, probably with about 34 lines to it or something like this, explaining these type of things. Okay, so guys, that was just a very brief intro into some of the texts in this field. Let's go through some provisional definitions. Ilm al-Mustalah, the science of Mustalah. We know what it is. It's علم بأصول وقواعد يعرف بها أحوال السند. Mustalah is the science which concerns the chains of hadith by which we can know its validity and its strength, okay, whether we should accept it or reject it. This is something, by the way, this list that we're going through, this checklist, is something a lot of the scholars do before they begin any type of science, any type of works. What they say is, let's go through these things to verify what is the purpose of what we're doing. So first of all, what is it? A definition. Secondly, what does it cover? Its subject, if you like. What is not subject, but what is its coverage? What does it do? So it covers the chain and the text of the hadith in terms of accepting it or rejecting it. That's the purpose of it. So if somebody says, well, what's the purpose of studying this? Well, you would know about the chain of hadith and the text. And why do you want to know that? So whether you should accept or reject a hadith. Okay, thamaratu, what is the, and they check this, what is the fruition? What are the fruits of knowing that? Well, you will have the skill to distinguish between these sciences. Between these hadiths. So somebody presents you a hadith, you have the skill to kind of say, well, okay, that isn't strong enough to be an evidence. That is. You have that skill. Hadith, we already know what, or in fact, somebody mentioned it earlier on. What is a hadith? The definition of a hadith?
Saying or action.
Or, yeah.
Action. Saying or action.
Okay, it is a qawlun wa fa'lun or
approval or characteristic.
Or a tacit approval. It can be as well, where something happens in front of the Prophet ﷺ and he doesn't say anything to rebuke it, or so it's a tacit approval, a silent approval. As far as hadith is concerned, they will also include sifa, a characteristic of the Prophet, because that is also described as a hadith. When they say the Prophet ﷺ looked like this, he had long hair, he had this, that is still classified as a hadith, a description of the Prophet. Okay, there's some definitions here, things like khabar, which just means like a news, informing somebody about something. Right, there's some definitions about, is there a difference between a khabar and a hadith, and generally people tend to treat them in the same way. The word khabar, sometimes they say there's a khabar from the Prophet ﷺ. There's some discussions, but we can go past that. There's also the term athar. You've probably heard the word athar. It's a narration as well. Some people say there's a difference. If so, what is that difference? You know, the difference in athar, khabar, those who do make a difference.
Is the athar the narrations of the Salaf?
Right, okay, you're right. Some people who make a difference say that athar is not a hadith, but it's to do with a sahabi or a tabi'i, whereas the khabar or the hadith is to do with the Prophet ﷺ. But many people don't make that distinction, but you're right, those who do so like that. Isnad, we've already said the isnad is a chain. Sanad is also really the chain. Okay, that is the chain of hadith. The matan, who knows what a matan is? Matan. The actual text. So you've got the chain leading up to the hadith, and then the actual hadith itself is known as the matan, the wording of it, okay? Musnad. The reason why we're just explaining some of these words is that because they may be referred to at a later stage, so you know what they mean. That this is something, the person that something is referred back to. So I say this is going back to this, that such and such, for example, is, you know, he said this or he did it, but the person that it's something is being referred back to. Right, okay. Now that, if you were looking at it from a very linguistic perspective, in usul al-hadith as well, musnad, and we're going to go into, we're not going to cover other books, but musnad can also be a book of hadith, any particular type. Yeah, like the musnad, very famous, the musnad of Imam Ahmad. But what is a musnad?
Organized according to narrators.
It's organized according to narrators, quite usually according to the Sahaba, but it can be organized according to the teachers of that scholar whose book it is. So let's say Imam Bukhari, he has so many teachers. We could organize the Sahih of Imam Bukhari in accordance with his teachers in an alphabetical manner. So let's start with alif, then ba, and so on, like this. This would be known as a musnad. Okay, so it's not organized in accordance with fiqh. Okay. Any hadith which is complete in its chain is also called a musnad sometimes. Okay. Right, the musnid is somebody who narrates the hadith. A muhaddith, we know what a muhaddith is. Yeah. It says somebody who is concerned with the science of hadith, in understanding it and narrating it, transmitting it, and very clued up He's not just a muhaddith, isn't just anybody who's concerned with it, because we could be concerned with hadith for today. That doesn't make us muhaddithin. It mentions وَيَطَّلِعْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِنَ الرِّوَايَاتِ وَأَحْوَالِ رُوَاتِهَا, somebody who knows a lot about the transmitters of the chains of hadith and stuff like this. A hafidh. What is a hafidh of hadith?
Someone who memorizes hadith.
Yeah.
100,000.
Some people have said somebody who's memorized at least 100,000 hadith. Other people have said somebody who in each, they say, in each section or category of hadith that he's looking at, he knows more than what he doesn't know. Obviously, the question then would be, how do you know what you don't know? If you think, well, look, I know 3 and I don't know the other 2. But this is obviously going by an understanding that there is only so many hadith and this person knows so many already. But that's a definition that some people give, that he knows in that category, he knows in most categories of hadith more than he doesn't know.
But for someone to be a hafiz, does he have to mention the isnad as well?
To where?
Like, does he have to memorize the chains?
As opposed to memorizing.
Or with the hadith, does he have to memorize?
Oh, just the
with
text.
chains?
Oh yes, of course. Of course. That's a, you know what, that in itself is an okay question, but it actually gives rise to a more important question. Alright. The thing is, I would have said that is a very important question, awesome question, but I don't want to just lie. I'm joking. The thing is, no, that's okay, that's good, but yes, muhaddithin only become muhaddithin by memorizing asanid as well. However, the number of a hadith according to a muhaddith and a hadith according to a faqih or an usuli don't have to mean the same thing. I mean, there's a huge overlap. So according to, let's say, a faqih, somebody who's concerned with fiqh and making law, he will see one hadith, the content of it is the main thing. He's only interested in the content. And obviously the chain, that it's correct, and therefore he can use it. Let's say there's a hadith which is exactly the same, it's identical. But in this one, the first one's transmitted by 3 people in the chain, and this one's got 4 people in the chain. According to the muhaddith, this is an entirely different hadith. The muhaddith sees this as, to him, the chain is almost everything. He sees this as entirely different. Or even if the wording was slightly different, to him it's still a different hadith. To the faqih it might be, oh no, this is the same hadith, but it's just got another word used in front of that, instead of that word, that's all. But to the muhaddith, no. If the name is different, if there's an extra name, if there's an extra anything, there's an extra hadith.
This is the expert reading.
That's it really. Now, this is why they have hundreds of thousands of hadith. Otherwise, there ain't hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. There ain't. The hadith are not so many, like in terms like that, whether people have disagreed how many thousands they are, but there's not hundreds and hundreds of, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hadith according to the muhaddith. Like, because, this chain is subtly different, it's another hadith. This word is subtly different, it's another hadith. Like that they are. But imagine you were kind of summing everything up to the same thing. So you're saying, according to the faqih, for example, that's the same hadith. You could have 50 hadith, but just because, and let's say each one of us narrated the same hadith today. So there's, let's say there's 12 of us, 15 of us, 20 of us, whoever is sitting, let's just say 5 of us, whoever transmits a hadith today, we learn a hadith and we transmit a hadith. According to muhaddith, that is that many extra hadith. According to the faqih, that's just one. Because the main thing is just one. So there is a difference. So the muhaddith, to him, it's a separate unit. And he counts them like that. So knowing the chain is essential. The chain makes everything for the muhaddith. That was the question that you wanted to really ask. But right, okay. Hakim is somebody who, if you thought the Hafiz was a don, this is the one that says, says father ko baap kehte hain. He's the one who's ahead of him, Hakim. He's the one who they say has encompassed the entire, the whole category of hadith, except what is a little, maybe just a little bit has kind of missed him. He's had a lazy day here and there, but otherwise he's done it. He's not even doing it. He's done it. It's like that. That's a Hakim. Anyway, now moving on. Right, when we look at a hadith, we're going to work down in breaking up the categories. Okay, so we're going to begin with looking at hadith. Primarily, you either have what is a mutawatir or khabr al-ahad. Now what this means is, first of all, before we even get into this, before we even get into hadith and stuff like this, we are concerned with the chain. If the chain is something which is so abundantly present and everywhere, it's been transmitted by so many people, multiple transmissions, that is something that everybody knows. Let's just say that is called mutawatir. That is something that is conclusive. Like things are today, the way that we know many things in the world today is just through mutawatir understandings, really. Whether you know a particular country exists, whether you know certain things, it's really just because, not that you've actually been there yourself, it's just because you've heard and you've heard from so many people that it's impossible that all these people got together just to trick you. So that is mutawatir. Okay. Now, when it comes to hadith, there is a difference of opinion. What makes something mutawatir? As in, how many people, how many chain in each layer of transmission, how many people do they have to be that are spreading this hadith for it to be mutawatir? And they disagree amongst themselves. Some people say that there has to be, at least 10 people in each chain. Some people say even if it's 5. Some people have said there isn't a specific number, but it has to have spread so much. In its true understanding, and how I've understood this to be is that mutawatir would be that, let's say, for example, I've said something now, and you guys have all gone away and passed that on to somebody else. They would be individual people that you would pass it on to. It wouldn't have to be like, for example, 3 of you go and pass it on to the same 3 people, who then pass it on to the same 3 people. It would be each person doing his own thing. So let's say Mazhia goes and passes it on in, Hebrew? Let's say he interprets it to, and so let's say this, this is Mazari, by the way, who's not in the camera, yeah? Good. No, I'm joking. Oh, he is. All right. Right. So the thing is, now let's say Mazia goes, teaches this hadith to 3 people. Mu'adh goes, teaches it to a different 3. You're teaching it to those people. Each one of you has gone and taught it to another 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Those people are going off individually and teaching it to other people. So you've taught it to 3. Each one of those 3 in his own right goes off and he starts teaching it to another 3. He starts teaching it to another 2. He starts teaching it to another 5. This is how mutawatir in its true understanding would work. It would be now that would be impossible for all those people to have come up with the same thing.
Exponential.
Absolutely exponential. That's the thing. But even greater, as in huge, with huge.
The people who say it's going to be 10 chains or whatever, is it in the first 3 generations? Because after that they all become mutawatir.
After that, they don't necessarily become all mutawatir.
When they mention the number, they're always talking about the first 3 generations.
Where it's passed from the Prophet ﷺ onwards. So let's say the companions, up until, no, then it would just carry on.
Yeah.
So it can't just stop at some point. But what you're saying, or what these people might say, is that look, it doesn't happen just straight away after the three generations. But let's say Imam Bukhari has documented a hadith in his book now. At that stage, everybody now has access to this book. So now there's going to be hundreds, thousands of people that have taken it from that book. What about before that point? But even then, I mean, Sahih Bukhari doesn't come till, the second, till the 200s. But the way I've explained mutawatir, the other way of looking at it is that let's say 5 people, or let's say 10 people, to make it happen, make the text, just be in line with what the text is saying. 10 people pass it on to the same 10, pass it on to the same 10. I find that very weird, and I don't think that is really... So like, let's say one person is passing it on to one, but this one person is passing it on to another one, and this person is passing it on to another one. So each one of us just goes and passes it on to one person, let's say. But because... So it's dropping down in 10s and 5s, and it's going on like that. That, in my understanding, doesn't necessarily... I would consider that a weaker approach at looking at mutawatir. In my understanding, does that evade absolute categorical doubt? I mean, it absolutely eradicates any ounce of doubt. I would have thought, in my understanding, that no, that doesn't. There could still be question marks. I mean, I'm not saying that they are, but there could be question marks at a scale like that. Whereas on the first scale, and that is how the Quran has been transmitted, that each person has gone off and they've taught and they've taught and they've taught. So that would be mutawatir. Right, so okay, mutawatir hadith, they say, is qat'i. It's conclusive. It carries the same strength as what would be a clear verse of the Quran. There's that type of strength. Now, this is mutawatir in its wording. Mutawatir can have two branches. Okay, mutawatir in its wording and mutawatir in its meaning. So mutawatir in its meaning is that if something, let's say there's a hadith symbolizing something, like let's say the Prophet ﷺ, the example he gives here is رفع اليدين في الدعاء. Now, that the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands in dua. Now they say so many hadith in the tens and tens and tens that, maybe even up to 100, they say that where the Prophet ﷺ is making dua and he's raised his hand. But they're not the same hadith. They're different incidents. But they've all got a common type of denominator, that you've got this one incident that is being replicated in all of them. So that incident may have a semantic or a symbolic tawatur, conclusiveness to it, that look, this incident has appeared in 100 different hadith, although the hadiths are talking about different situations. That would be called mutawatir al-ma'nawi, mutawatir in terms of its meaning, or symbolically, some aspect of it. Mutawatir al-lafz is that same hadith with its exact wording is mutawatir. So that same incident is being transmitted in so many places. Now, here there is a claim which many people have made, that there are many mutawatir hadith. Imam al-Shatibi, when he speaks about certain things, he raises a big question mark, that do mutawatir hadith even exist? Personally, I find that quite compelling and quite convincing, that mutawatir hadith that are lafzi in their actual wording, to be mutawatir in the way we describe them, I don't, Allahu A'lam, but I would imagine that would be very difficult to exist like that, to be documented like that. Maybe it existed, but is it documented? How do we know it existed? We only know what's documented. So Bukhari isn't going to, none of these ahadith are going to document all these hundreds of people reporting back like that. So do mutawatir hadith in their wording, mutawatir, not just symbolic, in their meaning, yes. Okay, you can get 100 different hadith that all have a common denominator, but they're talking about different incidents. But to get the same hadith that has come through tawatur of chains, these multiple huge en masse transmissions, I mean, I'm more inclined to believing and agreeing that they don't actually exist like that. Okay, that's what some people have raised. That although generally a lot of people do feel that, look, there's many books written that say, like for example, Imam Suyuti wrote a book called Qutf al-Azhar to do with the Mutawatir Hadith. One of the more recent Kattanis wrote a book, Nazm al-Mutanathir fil Ahadith al-Mutawatir, or fil Hadith al-Mutawatir. But the thing is that when these people have tried to say that they've collected Mutawatir Hadith, I mean, I think Jalaluddin Suyuti tried to bring forward 200, but strangely enough, when it was critiqued, and I mean, they found a huge portion of them to be weak, and they didn't even reach the darajah of Sahih, let alone, I mean, my only understanding for that is that they are not going by that first definition that we had of Mutawatir. If they're going by the definition that it just has to be transmitted by 5 people in 5 different ways. So I transmit, let's say, to one person, you transmit to one person, you to one, 5, and therefore that's a Mutawatir Hadith. That, in my understanding, because the purpose of Mutawatir is something that there can be no doubt about, not even a 0.01% doubt about it. It is as conclusive as the Quran. In my understanding, that hasn't happened in Hadith.
2 points on whose authority, who decided that Mutawatir Hadith are at the same rank as the Quran, the rest of the Quran?
Okay, now what they mean by that is in its conclusiveness, not in its revelation. It's not that this is Quran, but meaning that, like, let's say, first of all, but my understanding is Mutawatir in that lafzi sense hasn't been transmitted in that sense. But if it were, then what they mean by it is the strength it carries. So let's say there's a clear verse of the Quran has a ruling, like don't do this. A clear hadith has a ruling. According to certain scholars, they are not in the same category. According to many, they are, so it avoids that debate altogether. Because although all scholars would recognize that the hadith in its transmission is much weaker than the Quran, but they will say, look, if the verse says this is haram, something is haram, and the hadith is telling you something else is haram, then fine, they're both haram. Even though the hadith in its transmission is weaker, like the chain isn't as mutawatir as the Quran, the way the Quran's been brought down to us. So that's some scholars, that most scholars will all say, look, despite the difference, the discrepancy in their transmission, they are both, if they make something haram, they're equally haram. Yeah. Some scholars, like the Hanafiya, have said no. They've said that, look, if anything comes from the hadith, then it can only reach the level of makruh tahrimi. It can't reach the level of haram. Although their makruh tahrimi is still another version of haram, but it's just a slightly lesser version.
What about, would that go the same with Hadith al-Qudsi?
No, Hadith al-Qudsi, no. Hadith al-Qudsi is talking about hadith which are inspired as Allah speaking. But they're not revelation. It's not like Quran, but it's an inspiration of what Allah is saying. So it's not the Prophet ﷺ saying it. But these hadith are talking about what the Prophet is saying. So just to kind of clarify, look, rulings, the Quran says something is haram or something is obligatory. The hadith says certain things are haram and certain things are obligatory. According to most scholars, even though the hadith have been brought to us through a weaker channel, if you like. So what it's saying is, imagine the Quran is bringing it, is optic fiber, is being brought to us like that. Just say you've got something like proper, absolute solid, the transmission of it to us. Now, on the other hand, it's not even, it's something like, let's say hadith, some of them are maybe coming to us, some of them on like dial-up, something which is slow. It's not as strong. But they're saying the message in the end, in saying this is haram and this is halal, or this is wajib and this is fard and this is fard. Most scholars say that's the same. We'll take the same impact. I mean, we will receive the message with a similar impact. Like if it says haram, it's haram. The Hanafiya have said no. That if it comes to us through a hadith with a weaker transmission, something like I'm saying, like if it's dial-up, say no. If it says haram, it doesn't become haram, it becomes makruh tahrimi. If it says it's fard, it doesn't become fard, we call it wajib. That's the Hanafiya. Although in essence they're similar in the world anyway.
But seem not to act upon the hadith.
No, it's not that they're saying you don't act upon them. They're saying you have to act upon them, but you don't call it by the same category. I'll tell you another distinction they make. They say if a person did inkar, if he rejected one of those rulings that came from the Quran, that it's kufr, it becomes a kafir. If he rejected one of the rulings that came from the hadith in that transmission, it would be just fisq. It wouldn't be kufr because it's come through a weaker transmission. So it becomes a bit technical, the debate. That's really with the Hanafi. The other madhabs don't make that difference. They say, look, if we take it just in its efficacy as the Quran, in its effectiveness. Okay? The question...
I just wanted to ask you about this narration, the one he's brought as mutawatir lafzi.
Yeah.
So you said there's 70 from the Sahaba. So like you're saying that you don't believe that one exists. But the one that he's bringing here, what would you say?
You see, the thing is, this is a popular one that people bring, yeah? I'm just seeing where he's kind of brought as well. But the thing is that this famous hadith that man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan فَلْيَتَبَوَّأْ مَقْعَدَهُ مِنَ النَّارِ, that they say that up to, he's stating up to 70 Sahaba have transmitted that. The question has been, you see now when people say that's mutawatir, once again it's coming back to definition. What is your definition of mutawatir? And your definition hinges on what is the purpose of having this category. So the purpose of mutawatir is supposed to be something that has 0% doubt in it. That it's that widespread. So knowing that, like people say, knowing that China exists, even though you've never been there, you're not going to just doubt it because one person comes up to you and says, do you really believe it exists? Have you ever been there? Because it's so widespread that to deny it wouldn't make sense just because somebody comes and questions it. In that way, to have such strength, what they call ilm al-qat'i, conclusive ilm about something. To me, that would only, in my understanding, would only work in the first definition that we gave. That each person, that so many people are transmitting it, and from them so many, and from them so many. So it's exponentially kind of growing out. It's not just like coming down as a tunnel. It's multiplying at each layer significantly. That would become impossible, in my understanding, to have any doubt in that. If it came down at a single layer, just as a tunnel, you're saying, well, 5 transmit it, as in 5 or 10 independent, from them 10, from them 10. By that definition, yes, they will. This is why they say, those who say they are mutawatir hadith, they're going with that definition. The only question mark there is that does that entirely eradicate all doubt categorically? I would personally feel that although it does an excellent job at eradicating doubt, but I don't believe that it categorically would remove every single... could a person not even have a 0.whatever% doubt or 1% doubt or 1 might be strong, but even below that, or is it just so categorical now? This is the question. So those people who say, look, these hadith are mutawatir, like Suyuti, they're saying that this is fine, it suffices for conclusive knowledge.
So to everyone else except for the Hanafis, like denying a mutawatir, would that be kufr?
Even according to the Hanafis, denying mutawatir would be kufr. Denying mutawatir, the question now is, does mutawatir exist though? And then the question is, well, it exists, but according to what definition? Because if you change your definition, then but you were all calling it mutawatir. Like if you say, well, to me mutawatir is fine as long as 5 people from 5 people are transmitting it. So you just have to find 5 or 10 isolated incidents. So you've got one isolated hadith, he's got one isolated hadith talking about the same thing. I put them together, I say this is mutawatir. So then because we're using the same words mutawatir, you're going to say, well, of course there's plenty of mutawatir. But if I'm going by 10 people, from them 10 people, from them 10 people, then who's documented that? Nobody's documented it like that. So we're going to struggle to find anything like that. So that's what it is. Okay, so that's mutawatir anyway. What does exist definitely is something which is symbolically mutawatir. Mutawatir by meaning. Okay, bil ma'na. Something which, or what they call sometimes istiqra'i as well, which is where you look at so many different things and you derive a common denominator. Okay, you say that by taking a comprehensive look at something we can find. So for example, let's say in usul you get a lot of this, that let's say the principle that harm should be removed. That is a qat'i principle, a conclusive principle in the Sharia that there is no doubt in. But how did you arrive at it being conclusive? Well, there's so many different verses of the Quran, so many different hadith, so many different things that all have the common denominator that wherever there's harm, Islam wants it to be removed. The harm to be removed. So therefore, one thing you could derive you could say, well, looking at all of these, harm should be removed as a principle is qat'i, is conclusive. Okay, so that's another way people look at things. So that's the mutawatir thing aside. The other category is known as khabar al-ahad. Okay, this is the bulk of hadith that we have really. It falls under this category, khabar al-ahad. Now, this is a hadith which usually come down from one person or maybe two, and we're going to see some differences, but they come through these type of isolated links. Okay. Now, some people do split them up further into saying if something wasn't, in a simple sense, if something isn't mutawatir, it's khabrul ahad. Some people have said, look, if it's being transmitted by, let's say in each chain, 3 people, 3 to 3 to 3, just 3 to 3, this is called mashhur. Okay, some people have given it that name, mashhur. This still isn't mutawatir, so it still falls under the khabar al-ahad category. That if in each chain there were 3, no more but just 3. So they say that's strong, although it's not mutawatir, but it's strong. If there were 2, they call it aziz. So as an example of a hadith that is mashhur, that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمِ انْتِزَاعًا يَنْتَزِعُهُ بَلْ يَقْبِضُهُ بِقَبْضِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. That Allah will not just snatch it, just suddenly, He will remove it by removing the people of knowledge until eventually there's none, and the hadith is popular. Right, now, okay. Right, okay, let's just trying to... So mashhur, according to the muhaddithin, okay, that's what it means. Mashhur, otherwise, what does the word mashhur mean?
Dominant.
Yeah, like popular. Right, so something popular. It doesn't have to be. So mashhur, sometimes you got to be careful when you're reading texts, that people sometimes will use words that they're not using them technically, or they're not using them technically according to that science. So you might get a scholar say, oh, this hadith is really mashhur. A faqih in a fiqh book saying, oh, there's really mashhur hadith talking about this. But he's not using mashhur to mean the hadith mashhur, like this type of mashhur. He's just using it as the Arabic word, like this, oh, this hadith is really popular. As in, it's so popular, but it's probably made up. It's probably weak. I'll give an example, the hadith, and he actually uses it as an example here as well, that أبغض الحلال إلى الله طلاق, that the worst or the most despised halal to Allah is talaq. So that's most Muslims know that hadith. That you speak to Muslims, they first thing they say, oh, the talaq is like one of the most. It's a mashhur hadith, meaning that it's so popular, but it's actually a weak hadith. So it's not mashhur technically, it's just mashhur linguistically. That it's just popular. Okay. The Aziz category, I mentioned that having at least 2 people in each chain. Okay, and I'll give you a hadith, an example. A hadith that is in, it is in the Sahihain. What are the Sahihain?
The authentic
Yep.
collections.
But which ones? The Sitta. The Sahihain is 2. Right, the Ain at the end is for dual, Bukhari and Muslim. Right, otherwise known as the 2 who transmit them are known as the Shaykhain, the 2 sheikhs. Okay, but I mean, once again, depends who you're talking to. If you said Shaykhain in a hadithi context, we're talking about, who are we talking about? Say Shaykhain, like we're reading this hadith and we say the word Shaykhain, talking about Bukhari and Muslim. But we're reading.
Sorry, should we do Shafi's as Maliki? Surely it's Muwatta for us, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're known as the 2 sheikhs. In the hadith world, if you say the 2 sheikhs, it straight away goes to, we're talking about Bukhari and Muslim. So they won't say their name, they'll just say, oh, the 2 sheikhs had this. And you know exactly how they're talking about Bukhari and Muslim, because they are the 2 sheikhs in the world of hadith. They're known as the 2 sheikhs, that's what they're known by. But let's say you're reading a Hanafi fiqh book. It's not a hadith book, it's a Hanafi fiqh book, and it says the 2 sheikhs. Who are the 2 sheikhs? No, Abu Yusuf and Imam Abu Hanifa. They're known as the 2 sheikhs. Okay. So within the Maliki Madh'hab, if they say the 2 sheikhs and Qabisi, they're known as the 2 sheikhs. So if you're reading a Maliki fiqh book and it said, oh, the 2 sheikhs have said this, Shaykhain, oh, you're talking about Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani and Qabisi, who lived together in like what is modern day Tunis. But so the point is, it depends on the science. In Aqidah, when they mention sometimes the Shaykhain, as in not the books of Aqidah, sometimes when they're referring in terms of Seerah, when they're looking at Seerah as well, stuff like to Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma as Shaykhain. So the point is, it's all contextual. That's important. So the hadith, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين. That none of you believe until I become more beloved to him than his father, his child, and than all people. This is an Aziz hadith, as they say. So he gives the chain here. وَرَوَاهُ عَنْ أَنَسْ قَتَادَ وَعَبْدُ الْعَزِيزِ ibn Suhaib. See, from Anas, these 2 transmit it. وَرَوَاهُ عَنْ قَتَادَ شُعْبَةَ وَسَعِيدَ, and Shu'bah and Sa'id transmitted from Qatada. وَرَوَاهُ عَنْ عَبْدُ الْعَزِيزِ إِسْمَعِيلِ ibn عُلَيَّ وَعَبْدُ الْوَارِثِ وَرَوَاهُ عَنْ كُلٍّ جَمَاعًا, and from each one of these a group. That is Aziz. But this is all still part of the non-mutawatir. This all falls under Khabr al-Ahad, which is what the main body of hadith are. Okay. This hadith, by the way, none of you believe until I become more beloved to him than everybody. Do you think that is a real love? As in, do you think first of all that's possible, and that is what the hadith is demanding?
Yes. Of course.
So people would have, let's say,
I don't think that's actually possible.
right.
No, but like,
Okay, we're filtering out the. No, I'm joking. No, it's a good point. Actually, carry on.
I'm not sure if that's possible, to be honest, because like love is like your parents. You have an attachment with them. You
Yeah.
live with them for 22, 23 years.
22. Okay.
Well, you know,
Very
yeah,
specific.
Well,
I don't know. Mu'adh hasn't technically lived with them then yet.
well, if they like you, then you know.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, and you have children, and because they're around all the time, you become attached. And
That you
Depends
see,
how you define
you
love.
see, look,
Depends how you
like
define
Definitely
love.
possible, but I don't think it's possible for everybody.
What is
So
love?
therefore, I think it's probably
I
more
think-
rational.
I think it depends how you define
you
love.
see, because the hadith is saying that none of you believe until I am more beloved to you than min walidihi wa waladihi wa nasi ajma'in, and then all people. You see, people have an attachment and a love, let's say, for people, for their children, whether it's for their parents, for the 22 years that you explained that they're with them. But the thing is that is, it's like instinctual, isn't it? Especially, I suppose, with your parents, you're growing up with them, and with friends, you've got commonalities. And I suppose with children, it's a instinctual, like you see, it'll be instinctively there. Can you just have that or a stronger love? I suppose nobody's met the Prophet ﷺ right here. We've read about the Prophet ﷺ. Now we've heard about him. Through him, the deen has reached us. Could we have that type of, that affectionate love from that level, that emotional love on that level, as we could for people around us? This became a debate amongst scholars. Many ulama actually said, in fact, from what I recall from the classes we were in, that they were the majority of ulama said that this is a rational love that is being requested, not an emotional.
So if it was rational, then who memorised these things that their mum and dad say to them? Nobody.
It's true. That's true.
When it comes to the Prophet, it's a matter of iman.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the iman, then
Allahu Akbar.
No, but you know what I mean. So, and what makes Muslims the most feared in centuries ago was the irrational love.
No, true. That's, you see, the thing is, what you're saying, I totally understand, and I do believe that it's incomparable that any other civilization or any religion or any way of life or any philosophy or anything movement has matched Islam in that way, what Muslims have, the love they've had for the Prophet ﷺ. That is true. However, in accordance, just holding that hadith there, that none of you believe. And remember, this is to the entire Muslim body then. So every single person loves the Prophet ﷺ on that level. If not, then he isn't a believer. That would be a very high threshold for every single Muslim on the face of earth forever. Therefore, the scholars, keeping that in mind, have said, this type of demand that is on them, it must be to this level, is a rational love. That is the demand. Although the hope is that maybe it will become an emotional love, but for everybody, the demand is, the imperative is that it must be a rational love, that rationally. Although Imam al-Ghazali, from what I was taught, that felt it was an emotional love, that in the condition, in the actual hadith, the Prophet was talking about an emotional love, wasn't talking about the rational love. So rationally you can love, for example, you can love something because you know the outcome. Like you say, oh yeah, I'll do that. Not because, like for example, a person will undergo surgery, they will take medicine, they will do something which they don't even want to do, because they're loving it for the outcome in mind. So at the very least, a person, that is the minimum, that for the outcome, which is the akhirah, that the love for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is paramount. And then with the intention that inshallah it's an emotional love as well, as Shaykh al-Qawm has explained. Allah. Right, so the gharib is a hadith. It's not, gharib isn't gharib like the Urdu gharib, which means poor. Gharib in Arabic means, gharib in Arabic means, what does gharib mean?
Single chain.
Yeah. It means, no, in linguistically, it just means like strange, something that is odd or strange, or that is known as gharib. Okay, so as the Prophet ﷺ said, Bada al-Islamu ghariban wa sayaudu kama bada. That Islam began as something strange, as like odd amongst its surrounding, and it will eventually return to that as well in in later time. That meaning people will find themselves feeling at odds, or not at odds with but they'll find at odds with society because of the deen. That all of a sudden it becomes strange again in your surroundings. Right, now this is a hadith which وهو الحديث الذي يستقل بروايته شخص واحد. One person transmits it either in every single chain, أو في بعض طبقات السند ولو في طبق, or it might have two people in each chain, but one layer of the chain has at least only one person in it. That becomes a gharib hadith. And so that is most of the ahadith in that sense. Are gharib, that they come through just single, or at least in one layer of it, there's just one person transmitting. So as an example, the hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات, that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an is the sole transmitter. Right? And it says, okay, so even though there's a very popular hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات, but it begins with just one sahabi, no more than one. Just one sahabi transmits this incident, this إنما الأعمال بالنيات. So when one person transmits it, it becomes what they call gharib, or sometimes they call it fard, okay, single. They can call it sometimes fard mutlaq, which means clear fard, and that's if it right from the very beginning only one person transmitted it, like that hadith there, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Or maybe two people transmitted at the beginning, but somewhere down the line it gets restricted to just one person only, and then from him other people take it. As the example that when the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith that when the Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca and he was wearing a helmet. So the hadith, all of a sudden, when it reaches Malik, he's the sole transmitter. Okay. Right, so this now finishes all of that, and it brings us to, now we're going to take a look. That was in terms of transmissions. Now we're going to look at in terms of accepting and rejecting, because up until now we haven't been talking about whether you accept or whether you reject a hadith. So it says وَيَنْقَسِمُ خَبْرُ الْأَحَادِ مِنْ مَشْهُورٍ. So we mentioned all of that. Now we're going to take a look. There's two categories really, broad categories. So it's come down. We've taken a look at, initially if you're starting up, there's coming down. We've got mutawatir on one side. We've got Khabr al-Ahad. It has these layers of, tell me some of the names that it has, like if three people are in each chain. Mashhur. What about if two people? Aziz. If it's just one person, gharib. So that's the bulk of them, yeah? Now it's going to get it's going to split off into two kind of camps, if you like. One is maqbool and one is mardud. Okay? So maqbool, not the Bollywood movie Maqbool. Alright. But one is maqbool and one is mardud. Right? So what does maqbool mean? Accepted. So basically one category will be those hadith we accept, mardud, those we reject. Okay. Now, so looking at this, aqsam al-maqbool, those which are accepted, here they will be sahih. Okay, the sahih hadith and the hasan hadith. And then this will have two categories of its own. Sahih, those which are intrinsically sahih, or those which are externally sahih, so not because of they supported, so they became sahih, and those which are hasan and those which became hasan. So we'll take a look at, I'm thinking, shall we do the sahih and hasan? Yeah, what do you think? Okay, then. So a sahih hadith, linguistically, sahih means something which is sound, and mattasala sanaduhu bi naql al-adl al-dabit عن مثله إلى منتهاه من غير شذوذ ولا علة, that it has 5 conditions: that ittisal sanad, that the chain is connected, that it has the transmitters Adl ruwat, they have adl, so ittisal sanad, that is connected, that they are righteous people, that they are dabtu ruwat, that they are precise in their transmission. So not only are they the right people as in of the religion, they're righteous, they know what they're doing, but they're also precise in their wording, meticulous. Okay, and there's no shudud, there's no problem. There's no shudud, there's something, no like rarity or extreme rarity, oddness. Yeah, like no oddity about, and that can be about the chain or about the content, what the hadith says. So it can be you get a sound chain and then all of a sudden saying something totally strange, contradicts all of Islam. You know, wait a minute, that's a problem. Somebody's made this up. That can't be right. So, or illah, and a illah is a defect, but it's usually a hidden defect, which most people, just you and I and people like it, we can't tell. But a scholar of hadith can detect certain defects. So, as an example, you will get sometimes in the, let's say the hadith, let's say what the Malikiya use. There's a hadith which is in the Muwatta that the Prophet ﷺ forbade, prohibited to eat any creature that has kulli dhi nabin min as-siba', that possesses a canine, like from any predatory type of animal, wa dhi mikhlabin min at-tayr, and any basic like birds of prey, any birds of prey and predatory beasts. That's a Sahih hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Yet the school of Medina said that these animals are not haram, said they're only makruh. In fact, birds of prey are completely halal, they're not even makruh. And predatory animals like lions and tigers, and I know tigers are endangered, but not that people eat them anyway, but I mean, but or like wolves or anything like that is really just makruh to eat. So
Rats.
even the only thing with rodents is that they're not in the Maliki Madh'hab, school of Medina, by its popular transmission, very few things are haram. There's things which are makruh. Now there's just that bit is actually just edited and cut and paste and repeated everywhere. The thing is that the food, there's predatory beasts, they're makruh. But people don't tend to usually, I suppose maybe people do hunt lions and I don't know if they eat them, but I mean, it would be interesting I'd love to taste just to see what it's like, but I suppose, anyway, the thing is, then there's like rodents and stuff like this, that if it's venomous or if it's going to be poisonous or dangerous, toxic in its, like obviously rats contain a lot of, I don't know, all these type of.
So you said that hadith saying forbidding it.
Yeah.
How comes it's
Yeah, so we're going to come to that. Good point. I thought I could dazzle you guys and confuse you until you get all enticed by wanting to eat all these
But the cooking
tropical.
process would get rid of the poison. So
Would it? Okay, no. So rats and things like that are not haram. They're not haram. But I mean, there's guidelines saying, look, if, like for example, snakes, they're not considered haram per se, but the ulama have said that if the poison is dangerous, then that is maybe haram, but not the meat per se. So if a person could, I don't know, bypass that in any particular way, then that would be fine. Insects, for example, according to the Maliki method, are not haram. So this is why all the, these products you get with these beetles type of things, crushed or whatever it is and stuff like that.
so M&Ms are fine.
If yeah. So I mean, so this type of stuff, the insects.
yeah, you can't do zabah over insects. And
No,
snakes and
right.
stuff, so-
Good question. How do you eat? How do you get hold of these things? Well, just as you can't do zabah of a lion, as you can imagine, you go,
That's a good point.
1 minute, come here, got him in a headlock, right? As you can imagine, wouldn't quite work. So with those type of animals, it's hunting. So obviously, if it was traditionally, arrow, spear, whatever, and Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. Obviously, with docile creatures, you do zabah. of them, the slaughtering. And with camels, there's what they call uqar, which is where they from underneath kind of stab the camels. They don't actually, slaughter like camels. Obviously, the neck is way too. So things like, for example, elephants, or there's the debate that it'd probably be. I mean, if they were to be slaughtered, it'd probably be done the same way as a camel. Obviously, you couldn't do it in another way, or unless they were hunted. If they were hunted, then they would just be shot at or something. This is if traditionally, or there would be arrows or spears or whatever it was. For for birds, for animals of the sea, they're just removed and they just die. That's halal. For other animals, they're simply killed with Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. There isn't a dhabah, like there isn't, like let's say saying insects.
Mm-hmm.
They're not killed like,
Scorpion.
yeah, like, so let's say scorpions or something like this. They're not done you're not going to try and slaughter them or anything. You don't do a slaughter except docile. Dhabah is only for docile.
What do the other schools say about eating insects?
Okay, so it's only the Malikiyah that really allow it, as far as I'm aware, that out of the popular schools anyway.
Do you know why that is?
Because you see, the other schools they seem to take an approach almost when it comes to food. They seem to take an approach which is like almost that things you have to prove them to be halal.
Okay.
Almost although they in principle may not agree, but that they do that, but in theory but in practice they do.
So there's nothing prohibiting through.
No, there isn't a hadith or anything. No. And the Maliki, you see, they've taken like that verse of the Quran, قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِيمَا أُوحِيَ عَلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُهُ إِلَّا that say, I do not find from what has been revealed unto me for somebody who wishes to eat haram except the following. And that only mentions pig, blood which has been shed, or animals which have been sacrificed for other than Allah. It doesn't mention anything other than that. So the thing is now, therefore the Malikiyah said, well, this verse of the Quran says that. So how can we? No, but I'm coming to the hadith, by the way. That's a separate discussion. So now the Quran doesn't mention these other animals. So the Malikiyah and the school of Medina had said, well, so these things are, why they're makruh is, people feel multiple reasons. So for example, this hadith prohibiting these creatures, some ulama have felt, that may have been a discouraging prohibition, not a forbidding one. So that's one interpretation to the hadith. The other interpretation is an interesting one, and that is the one I want to touch into, about illah, a hidden defect. You see, a hidden defect doesn't have to be a defect per se, but it could be a problem. It's a spanner in the works. So let's say this hadith now. This hadith is, if I recall correctly, I believe it's being transmitted after the companion from the people of, I believe it's either Basra or Sham, all the way through. From all the chain. So after the companion, it's these people who are from, it's either Basra or Sham, but these people who are outside of Arabia in the chain. So let's just say Abdullah is narrating from Zayd, who's narrating it from Abu Huraira, or from somebody else, let's say Sa'id, who's narrating from Abu Huraira. Now the thing is, the people of Medina had asked that how can it be that a question or a matter that is so pertinent and so relevant to daily life, like food, every single person eats every single day, meat is so pertinent, everybody's going to be cooking, they're going to be hunting. How can it be that a hadith to do with prohibiting meat was not narrated by anybody in Medina, even though this is where the Prophet ﷺ lived, and this is where he taught, and this is where Islam, this was the bedrock of Islam. How can it be that nobody in Medina transmits this hadith? So even though those people who do transmit it from, let's say, Iraq or Sham, they per se, they individually are sound people. So let's say you're transmitting from him. Now individually you're all sound people, but the question mark here and the spanner in the works is that how can this be a daily phenomenon, food? This question be so ubiquitous that it's on everybody's minds, and nobody in Medina transmits it, and yet companions in Medina teach otherwise. So Aisha radiallahu anha, other companions said about predatory meat that it's okay when they were asked questions. So this was a huge spanner in the works. So this is what they would see as an illah. It's a hidden defect. So it's not a defect to the person who's just looking at it, there's no defect. But to a particular scholar, he may find in it a kind of defect. For him, it renders this hadith either void or it's problematic. Therefore, they have to interpret it again in a different way. So let's say the Hanafi school. Now they say, okay, we're going to go simply with this hadith says all birds of prey, all predatory beasts are haram. Full stop. So it's smooth, it's simple. We're going to take it like that. So it's all haram. But then you get a hadith in Tirmidhi where the Sahaba are asking the Prophet ﷺ, is it okay if we hunt hyenas to eat? And the Prophet says, okay. So is a hyena not a is a hyena not a beast of prey? It is. So the thing is, in this situation, the Shafi'iyya say, they've gone like the Hanafi as well. We're taking a blanket statement. All beasts of prey are haram. Predatory beasts, are all haram. However, hyenas, we're going to make an exception. You see, then the question is, what's so special about hyenas? Why the exception for them? Why not a wolf? Why not because either you're going to go like the Hanafiya and say, look, no, blanket statement at all, but then they've got a problem. What about this hadith?
They might argue that at that time it wasn't forbidden.
No, they can try and, people will try and interpret, they will do that. They will say, look, but what about, and we accept that. However, then after the Prophet, the fatwa of Aisha and other of the Sahaba of Medina were that, look, predatory, animals, beasts are not haram. So it kind of, now because the Malikiyah saw it like that, they saw it as, look, everything is halal unless proven otherwise. Therefore, the Prophet hasn't spoken about kangaroos, but because everything is halal, therefore they're halal. Now, whereas other people would be reserved now, they're thinking, well, I don't know, you see. So this is another interesting thing, another interesting way to look at it is there's a hadith that the Prophet
So something out of Medina, if there's a hadith, but the opinion of someone from Medina is against that.
No, it's not.
Opposite to, so they will take the opinion.
No, it's yes and no. Like, yes, the school of Medina will always prefer, as Imam Malik said, that we will never leave entirely those of Medina and go to those outside. In the Muwatta, he says that I've never walam akhruj an jumlatihim ila ghayrihim. That I never, like, even if I left this scholar, but I held on to that one, I never left them in their entirety, the people of Medina, for non-Medinans. But it's not saying that non-Medinans are necessarily incorrect. But I'm just saying, okay, there is that principle, but put that principle aside, it's the matter. The matter was food, which was ubiquitous. It was like every day. It doesn't make any sense. If it was a theoretical matter, it would be different now.
Talk about food.
Now, should we make an order?
Pig. We would have pork. Pig is haram.
Okay.
But does that actually go all the way to wild boar?
Okay, that's.
Because they were hunting wild boar in the jungles. So I'm just trying to work out, would they also classify that as a pig?
No, they would. Yeah, khinzir does cover. So I don't think the pigs. That they talk about pigs are like the way we see a pink and all this type of. I don't think it's like. I think they were talking about boars and stuff like that in general. But what is interesting though, is, although the Malikiya haven't done this, but I've seen some question marks by other. I'm not sure if Imam Shawkani follows it through, but he definitely raises a question about why is it that in the Quran, whenever pig is mentioned, only he says the meat and not the fat or other things. Why does it always say lahmul khinzir, never just khinzir? Although I'm not sure if he follows that full through in saying, well, so the rest isn't haram, but other people haven't questioned it like that. The pig, categorically, they accept. The Malikiya have probably, in food, they have been most flexible and accommodating.
Hanafiya don't accept the bones. Or is that for-
Yeah, but bones are different. I'm talking in terms of animals. Yeah, bones, even there's debate amongst the Malikiya. Huh?
The pig bones and all that.
Yeah, because the thing is, the Hanafiya see the pig as najasul ayn. It is inherently impure. The Shafi'iyya agree with them, and they also see the dog as inherently impure as well. And I believe Abu Yusuf from the Hanafiya also agrees with them on that. The Malikiya don't see any living creature as inherently impure. Even the pig. They say life necessitates purity. So the school of Medina sees that every living thing is pure. Such wisdom. It is. It makes so much sense. It's a very natural. It says that, look, obviously this thing is haram. You can't eat it. This thing, whatever, like the hadith says about the dog, if it licks the bowl, whatever, you follow through. But does it mean these things are inherently impure? According to the school of Medina, life necessitates purity. So every living thing is pure. So no, it's not inherently impure. That then begs the question about, leather. Because the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, كُلُّ إِهَابٍ قَدْ دُبِغَ كُلُّ إِهَابٍ دُبِغَ فَقَدْ طَهُرَ, that every hide of the animal, the type of leather that is taken off it, that is then cleansed, has become pure. There is debate amongst the Malikiya then. A lot of the schools accept that hadith, but they don't accept pig, including the Malikiya. Some of the Malikiya, they go both ways. Some of the Malikiya go a bit super strict on saying, no, we don't even allow this, we don't allow wild animals, don't. And some of them, which is what Ibn Wahab, the student of Imam Malik, transmits, that no, everything except pig, just like the rest of the schools, is fine if it's been cleansed. And then some take it a step further from the Malikiya, like Ibn Abd al-Hakam and Sahnun, who say including pig, if it was cleansed, if it was purified, then it's fine, because the hadith says kullu ihab. So it kind of fluctuates like that.
What about silk? Because wasn't there a hadith against men wearing silk? Yet they wore it as armor.
Yeah, but that's just exceptional. Like different exceptional circumstances. So
before you move on, sorry. The pig thing, can you apply that to any other omnivore, like an animal that eat anything, or is it just exclusive to a pig then?
What do you mean?
Like,
Like what? What?
like some animals will eat anything just like a pig would.
What's the question though? Can we apply what part of the pig thing?
Like, because why is pig haram?
Oh, why is pig haram?
Yeah.
Chuck, can you send? Let me send a quick text message. Why does Allah made pig haram?
Of it, we know why it's actually bad for you, the meat itself.
But is that necessarily the reason though?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't think so.
We don't know what the reason is.
Chicken is just as dirty. Chicken is just as dirty.
And to be honest,
Isn't chicken actually quite bad in terms of its in terms of,
for like past thousands of years, most of humans in Europe have been eating pig, and most of them are fine. So it's probably not like it's bad for you as a
confessions. Confession time.
A lot of people do say that.
There was a documentary about eating pink sausages, and it does pink meat. Does
cook it properly, then you can.
So the key is cook the pig properly.
So the benefit of the dars is that as long as you're cooking it properly.
What's the bacon? I'm saying it's haram because it's slated, but as to why?
It's haram when it's undercooked. Is that the? No, the
Do you see what I'm trying to
yeah.
say though? Like, because people say scientifically, oh.
No, I don't. No, the thing is that we don't. My understanding, Allahu A'lam, but I don't believe we know why the pig is haram. We know that it is haram. Then there's, you see, the thing is in usul, and although this is usul al-hadith, but in usul al-fiqh, you will learn that the illah is the cause for something, the causative element for something to be haram. So, for example, Allah says, teaches us alcohol is haram. The illah is the intoxication. The intoxication is the reason why it's haram. Now, then there may be also what we call hikam or hikmah, wisdom, which, so there may be other wisdoms surrounding it as well. The wisdom may also overlap with the cause, the illah. It may be identical, it may overlap, it may be different. There may be other wisdoms to it as well, but they're not the sole cause. So for example, there may be alcohol has an addictive nature to it, it may be this, but that's not the cause, that's another wisdom to stay away from it, and it may be that it makes people do all sorts of things. But that's not the cause, that's a wisdom. So now, when we have the illah, the cause for something, it's usually because it's been explained by either Allah or the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, if other than that, we can just guess the wisdom. Okay, we can guess the wisdom. But it doesn't mean we're accurate with the cause. So when we're saying, look, some of the wisdoms of not eating pork is that it may carry disease, or it may be dangerous if undercooked. But I mean, it may be. But is that the illah? That may. I mean, I don't believe that's the illah, but I believe that may be one of the wisdoms associated with it, that it prevents disease and it does this and does that. Okay. Allahu A'lam about the illah. Right, so any other, although we went completely off topic there, should we do the sahih quickly? Right, okay, sahih. So as we said, it has these 5 conditions to it. The chain is connected, the narrators must be just, the narrators must be precise, it must have no oddities, and it must have no defect. Okay? So, as a hadith, I mean, there's so many sahih hadith. Let's just say, he gives an example that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions the chain. Bukhari transmits from Abdullah ibn Yusuf, who says Malik, from Shihab, from Muhammad ibn Jubayr ibn Mut'im, from his father Jubayr ibn Mut'im, that he heard the Prophet ﷺ read in the Salatul Maghrib by Surah Tur. Okay, so that's just thing. I mean, there's so many sahih hadith. Okay, now let's. If a hadith is sahih, you must act in accordance with it. Obviously, unless the ulama have interpreted it in another manner in order for it to kind of fit in comprehensively. But just knowing a hadith is sahih, having its ruling, it must be acted upon. If you hear some of the ulama say this hadith is sahih, what they mean by that is it has met these 5 conditions. It doesn't, if they say it is not sahih, it means one or more of these 5 conditions is an issue. By saying a hadith is sahih, does it necessitate, I know I said a moment ago that you must act in accordance to it, but it doesn't always necessitate that that it has no other interpretation, or there's no other confounding variable. So, for example, in the school of Medina, the hadith which is sahih will still be the practice of Medina will override a sahih hadith, because that is also classified as sunnah, and we'll explain that at a later date. According to, let's say, the Hanafi madh'hab, there's questions about there's certain, I know there's debates of at what point what if it contradicts with qiyas or it doesn't, and I know that sometimes the Hanafiya have been misrepresented on that point, and they haven't actually always said it like that. But anyway, coming back to this point, just because a hadith is sahih, the Shafi'i madhab, Imam Shafi'i's famous statement, إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي. If the hadith is sahih, then it is my madhab. That is not the opinion of the other madhabs.
Even the Hanbali.
Potentially even the Hanbalis, although the Hanbalis do follow a large amount of the way, but they also have things like Masalih Mursala, where they suspend Sahih Hadith for the welfare. So the Hanafiya definitely not. They say that a Hadith must still meet several conditions, like if it's a Sahih Hadith, but it's an isolated incident. It's gharib. It's not mashhoor. It's not this. It's not that. And the mas'ala is umum al-balwa. It's a ubiquitous mas'ala. Then there's a question mark. It's something which is everywhere. Then how can it be there's only one hadith addressing this issue? Especially if it's an everyday matter. So they raise questions about how can it be that the, saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in Salah, that is only transmitted by this person when this was something that's happening every single day. So many people should have done it.
Or like the gym possession.
Or like the jinn possession, that how can it be that there was no reports of jinn possession? And if people are to believe, but that one we've just just added that in there. But I mean, so it doesn't always mean that is the madh'hab. Okay, so and according to the Malikiya, also the Hanafi have a condition that if a hadith is sahih but it is contradicted by its narrator. Okay, so let's say Abu Hurairah transmits a hadith, but he himself doesn't act according to it. So Abu Hurairah transmits the hadith that if a bowl has been licked by a dog, then it should be washed 7 times. But he himself says, if you wash it 3 times, it's okay. So the Hanafiya say, so according to them, that's a defect here. So this is the point, you see. So anyway, according to the Malikiyya, there's things like Amal Ahl al-Madinah, the practice or the Sunnah of Medina overrides the transmitted hadith and things like this.
Does that include mutawatir hadith as well, or just Sahih hadith?
No, because this is just Sahih. We're in this category of Khabr al-Ahad, just Sahih hadith. Because the Amal Ahl al-Madinah, the Malikiyya believe that to be a mutawatir sunnah. That's why. Then in hadith, people have this discussion, what is the most sound chain of transmission? Asahhul asanid. And as you know, although there's many runners up, right? But the dawn chain of transmission is what? Malik an Nafi' an Ibn Umar. So from Malik, who's transmitting from Nafi', who's transmitting from Ibn Umar. And that is, as Bukhari has said, as-silsilatu dhahabiyya, the golden chain. Alright, so now
All the scholars of hadith agree that that's the golden chain.
no, they've had after Bukhari got popular, although people did disagree. So there were some people who said that it was Malik on Zuhri on Salim from his father, from Ibn Umar, and some people said that was like Ahmad ibn Hanbal said that one Zuhri and Salim and from his father. There's other people, Ibn al-Madini said from Ibn Sirin, from Abida, from Ali. People had different ones. Ibn Ma'in said A'mash, from Ibrahim, from Alqama, from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. But that was Ibn Ma'in, Yahya ibn Ma'in. But the popular one, what is known as the golden chain by Imam Bukhari, is Imam Malik from Nafi' from Ibn Umar. So one of the first and earliest books written about the Sahih, collects Sahih, as they say here, is they put Bukhari first, but really we know what the first one was. It was obviously the Muwatta of Imam Malik, but obviously it is so that, and then obviously after that comes things like Bukhari.
Wasn't it Nur al-Ida?
So why
That doesn't. Right. Okay. Right. The thing is that no, there's not a. The thing is, it's not about. You see, what they call the Sihah Sit or the Ummahat Sit is an arbitrary placement of books. It doesn't make a huge. There are other people who have placed Ibn al-Athir, for example. Other people who did place the Muwatta amongst the main set of books. That's isn't it Ibn Tahir, who the first person who made those 6, and that was his choice why he put that. And people have the reasons they say he was trying to go about it in a particular way. Some people said he maybe felt that the Muwatta was included in most of those hadith anyway that were in those 6. So therefore there was no point in, because most of the Muwatta is in either the Sahihain or the other books anyway, so it's not a large book. But anyway, whatever he did, he came up with that. That's a very arbitrary, just, it's like somebody just saying, oh, I'm going to group 6 books and this is what they are. But many other people who did that grouping actually placed the Muwatta in there and didn't place like Ibn Majah and things like that.
Was one of the reasons Bukhari became so popular because it was politically motivated? With the Caliph's courts and
I don't.
They're both Shafis, aren't they?
That's an interesting question. People ain't actually too sure what Imam Bukhari was, but
The
I
Shafis
think
claim him as a.
the Shafi'iyya claim anybody, man. That's usually they just.
Who was that said Muwatta in the category with some Mullah al-Qari?
Who said what? Yeah, I mean the Hanafiya, to be fair to them, have usually been very fond of the Muwatta as well, although they haven't. Not all of them have been that true to it, but some of them have said that it is in a category of its own. As Shah Waliullah Dahlawi said, he said that it is in a category of its own, and then obviously is the Sahihain. But also, I mean, the Maliki have always been clear on that. Imam Shafi'i himself said that there is no book of after the Quran that is more sound than the Muwatta.
You say they liked it so much that they decided to pinch it as well.
Who?
The Hanafiya.
Right.
They've got the Muwatta of their own.
That's the riwayah of Imam Muhammad, but except it's got a few variations in it. Yeah, but the point is that it's it is. You see, the Muwatta has more than it has. It is the oldest Sahih or collection of Hadith that we have today in the entire Muslim world. It was done by an absolute legend, an undisputed legend of Hadith, Imam Malik, who hasn't really been criticized for his skill of Hadith. Now, the thing is, in his book, he includes several ahadith where the chains are not connected. That's because it was early days, and in his time, it was still an age of trust.
It wasn't so much of an issue.
So later on, people start saying, no, we don't care who you are, we still want to see the entire chain. And therefore, they're saying, because Imam Malik still has, he has about 1800 hadith, let's say, give and take in the different narrations. Now, out of them, at least 700 will have the chains kind of missing. Or they'll have it, when I say missing, parts of it may be missing. So they feel that, this ain't right, and it needs to be objective and scientific. Whereas Imam Malik, in his age, it was more about trust. It was about that the people of Medina have, this hadith's been passed down to me, I'm passing it down to you. It's been, the fact that Imam Malik had done it, it was done. It's like they say, wasn't it, what was the person's name? Dawood ibn al-Hussein, is it? Hussein with a Sad. But anyway, there's a Rawi who they had issues with. Imam Bukhari says he had issues with, and there's other people who said they had issues with him, but we never touched him because we knew Imam Malik transmitted from him. This is the authority that Imam Malik carried. I mean, he carried that, here's a Rawi, a narrator that these people are not happy with. People like Imam Bukhari, they're like, nah, we ain't happy with this person. We want to slate him. But they know Imam Malik transmitted from him, and everybody steps back. That, Malik obviously is a don. Like, we can't, to touch him now is to kind of say, well, what is Imam Malik doing, narrating from? So this is so obviously this gives you a picture of what it was like in Imam Malik's time. It was about trust.
But didn't Imam Zayd ibn Ali, Little Malik as they call him, give the sword principles how Imam Malik derived hadith from the Muwatta?
Yeah, I mean...
So why do we need to go 400 years later and do a sword? We've already got it within the system, haven't we, our own?
Yeah, I mean, but this is to know what these... You mean like, what is Sahih, what is this? Obviously, this is just to tell us, to understand chains. We just need to kind of see how they work and what have the scholars kind of agreed upon. So, okay. Right, people, now... So that's the thing about the Sahih. It is obviously usually Bukhari, then Muslim. these are some people do generally feel that Bukhari is more asah, is more valid than Muslim. Although a lot of the people of the Maghrib, a lot of the Maliki used to usually prefer Sahih Muslim over Bukhari. This is why when you get a lot of the books of the Malikiya, they're usually referring to their hadiths back to Sahih Muslim, like let's say the Kulliyat of Maqari and these people, as opposed to Bukhari. He does refer them to Bukhari as well, but he's referring them more to Muslim. Also, Sahih Muslim is better organized, much better organized. The question, did Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim exhaust the Sahih in their collections? What do you think?
No.
Obviously not. That's clearly not the case. See, as Imam Bukhari فقد نقل عن بخاري أنه قال وما تركت من الصحاح أكثر. Imam Bukhari himself says, and what I left out from the Sahih collection was more than what I put in. Okay, and he's included probably about there's probably around 8,000 hadith, and without the repetitions and everything, probably about 4,000 or 5,000 hadith in Sahih Bukhari. And in fact, we've got the precise numbers here. كما عدة الأحاديث في كل منهما. Bukhari has 7,275 hadith, which include the repetitions. So as you've got this 7,275. So rounding that up, as I said, to 8,000. And when you remove that, the repetitive transmissions, you have about 4,000. Okay, and Muslim has about 12,000, including the repetition. And if you remove them, it brings it down to about 4,000 as well. So a lot of them repeated, as you can see. Right, so there's many other collections that have Sahih Hadith, by the way. Books like Sahih Ibn Hibban Sahih, Ibn Khuzayma's Sahih, some in the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim. The other books of Hadith like Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasa'i, all these type of Dar Qutni, Bayhaqi, all of these have. So it's not that Sahih is not restricted to these.
What about all the other Hadith collections from other schools that no longer exist today? Like Jafar, didn't we have one? The Jafri school, sorry, and a few other schools.
I mean, usually Hadith, the effort to preserve Hadith and Sunnah was a collective, a huge, almost like a communal effort by the Ummah, done by usually Ahl Sunnah. And in fact, some people believe that is what then formed Ahl Sunnah, the movement to preserve Hadith was their thing. So you don't see usually other schools have that type of, like muhaddithin that work to kind of do things. I mean, they I'm sure they did as well, but not on that scale. Okay, so and I'm sure they do have their books as well, but obviously their things have been sometimes imaginably they've been critiqued by Ahl Sunnah, just as they refuse to accept really from Ahl Sunnah.
You know when the Muwatta was being developed, what was the main reason why it was started off as 4,000 hadith and then moved down to 1,200?
Or even more than 4,000. I mean, Imam Malik says he continued to kind of like filter through them.
What was the reason? I mean, you could find weakness in them.
No, I don't think it's necessarily weakness, but it may have been things like repetition. There may have been things that he felt somewhat unsuitable.
People made them up as well.
No, but the ones he had, the Sahih ones,
Right.
he said that.
That's right.
But he said that Imam Malik said there's many hadith which I don't feel are suitable to discuss in front of people. So he didn't used to. So certain hadith which people say, for example, that people now say are to do with the attributes of Allah and stuff like this. Imam Malik was very strict about narrating, transmitting, or speaking about these type of things.
Also, wasn't there criticism that there was a hadith in Medina, I think by Musayyib, but Imam Malik took the opinion, I think, of someone from Khurasan.
Say that.
There was basically someone from Khurasan that Imam Malik took the opinion of, but there was a hadith actually in Medina from Musayyib.
Which one were we talking about?
It was, I can't remember his overall opinion, but I think it was a criticism by Imam Shaybani.
Okay, I mean, bring it to me. We'll look it up, inshallah. So, right, okay. Now, some as an example, this Sahih Ibn Hibban I mentioned. It's a book that's actually they say it's very unique in the sense that it's not done according to the books of fiqh and it's not done according to the masanid. But it says that he called it Taqasim wal Anwa', that he has a really strange way of organizing Ibn Hibban does, which has made it very difficult for people. And some of the later day scholars had reorganized it. Ibn Khuzaymah, which they say is more sound than Sahih Ibn Hibban. And then you have books like Mustakhrajat. Mustakhrajat, by the way, are books which a scholar of hadith will visit a collection of hadith. So let's say he'll go to Sahih Bukhari, and obviously that's already there. Sahih Bukhari has got its chains. And what he will do is, it says, أن يأتي المصنف إلى كتاب من كتب الحديث فيخرج أحاديثه بأسانيد نفسه من غير طريق صاحب الكتاب فيجتمع معه في شيخ ومن فوقه. That you see people, like somebody will come to Bukhari, you'll take out all the hadith of Bukhari, but you go through your chain, not including him, but you'll end up meeting with either his teacher or somebody further up. That's called a mustakhraj. Okay, so meaning that it's supposed to be still on the same level as well, like as in, I suppose it doesn't have to, but mustakhraj, that what you're trying to do is you're trying to show diversity in chains. You're trying to say, look, like you're trying to say, look, here I'm going to meet this person at this point, so I'm going to bring my chain. It's just it's something the muhaddithin would do, but anyway, so moving on. What is obviously people today say what is in the Sahihain in Bukhari and Muslim has a solid, there is a debate about what is its level and is it qat'i, is it conclusive or not, and it's best to still really leave it as, just like very sound, but to maybe avoid saying it's conclusive qat'i. Right, now, I don't know if you know, do you know what the condition of Imam Bukhari was for his Sahih?
Other than the 5.
No, that's the condition to be a Sahih Hadith. But what did Imam Bukhari have as his own?
Not that the possibility of the narrators meeting, but they must have learned from each other. Is that what it is?
The meeting
With
to be documented to prove it.
Yeah, but the thing is, you see, everybody has the condition of
Possibility of meeting.
Yeah, that they have to have had the possibility of meeting. But Bukhari,
They must have learned from or studied. No?
yeah, but the thing is, Imam Bukhari tried to kind of make his conditions a bit more intense. He tried to say that it's not just that they had to have overlapped and there was this possibility of that they had to have mentioned, for example, that I studied from this person or I did, because normally the way the hadith chains work is, let's say Qasim here says he transmits from Nav, like something in a hadith, like you say an this person, which means from this person. Now people coming 400 years after, they don't know who, whether you actually studied from each other. So what they would do is look at, okay, when were you born? When did you die? When were you born? When did you die? What parts of the world did you travel? So imagine you're from America and you're from the UK, and I think, well, how did he hear from him then? But then it says, oh, well, you actually came to the UK on 3 occasions. So I think, oh, well, that's possible then.
Or Hajj.
But there's got to be some, because many ulama, yeah, you're right, or it could have been. But Hajj, a lot of the time, people may not have been transmitting on that scale. But let's just say you've said that now, so there's plausible grounds, that's fine. But Imam Bukhari was a bit on top, and he didn't, the understanding is that he made extra conditions. Now, this is what people have kind of extracted from his writings, and especially from Imam Muslim's refutation of him as well, because Imam Muslim refutes him, and then Imam Muslim he's refuting certain conditions And he's saying these are his conditions. So you start to understand that, well, allegedly, because Imam Bukhari was Imam Muslim's teacher. So you have this understanding that, wait a minute, he must have had these conditions then. So Imam Bukhari is saying that it's not just, can't just be plausible. It can't just be, well, you came to England on 3 occasions. You have to somewhere mention him amongst your teachers as well. Like, you have to say, oh, by the way, I have heard from hadith from this person, or you narrate something else from him at another. So let's say in another hadith, you mention that haddathana, or I heard him say something. Now, because you're saying I heard him say something, that means you are obviously present with him. Now, if in another hadith you mention, on the authority of this person, it's okay because we know you've actually heard him. So the likelihood is you heard this from him as well. Even though technically it could be that you heard the first thing from him, but the second thing you heard through someone else. It's like there's likelihood, that just because you're transmitting things from him doesn't mean you have to have heard everything, but because the likelihood is there, then that's okay. So Imam Bukhari tried to take it up a notch. Obviously, Imam Muslim criticizes him for not being able to do it on so many counts. He says that he failed to meet his condition, but he tries his best, obviously, to do that. So that really takes us up to Sahih is done. That takes us up to Hasan. Obviously, it's come to it's been quite a. But I mean, what we're going to do from here onwards, inshallah, will be just explaining some of the definitions and trying to just give some examples and move on, just so we can get it out the way ASAP, biiznillah, in order to move on. Alright, see, you've been working out. And that way we can, inshallah, move on from here. The aim is to do this, to do a quick kind of recap through a poem, and then to move on to actual ahadith maybe. So, وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. بارك الله فيكم. جزاكم الله الخير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.